we just hammered the table this morning on President Trump saying in Saudi Arabia yesterday that the neocons and the globalist world builders build nothing, they just destroy. And it is time for you to have self-determination, and we respect your history, we respect what this country is, and we want to simply partner with you in ways that we can be harmonious. It's like just music to our ears, like the angels singing, and now Trump, the first president in Qatar, and that seems to be going really well. Mike, the floor is yours. What is the president doing right now?
I thought that speech that you referenced is one of the most beautiful speeches I've heard Trump give since the Mount Rushmore speech at the end of 2020. It was shocking. I mean, it really showed a level of being dialed in to the tone of the base of this country. And I have to imagine if you're sitting in Saudi Arabia, or if you are a member of really any part of the Arabic Peninsula, that you are listening to that speech and thinking, my God, there's a president of the United States who actually understands me and respects me and dignifies me. And it was absolutely incredible. I mean, it really was. I don't remember the last time I've heard anything like that, even from Trump. So I thought it was very impressive. Trump certainly has a way with connecting with folks, especially I think the alliance between him and Saudi Arabia has been such a fascinating one to follow. You've had this real beef between the Biden foreign policy establishment and Saudi Arabia. The Atlantic Council white papers would refer to MBS, bin Salman as as Putin adjacent. We very nearly labeled him an attempted dictator that we should overthrow on par with Putin. There was a strange affair with the Khashoggi, the tragic case where Khashoggi was killed in the embassy there. And although Snowden, I believe, came out and said that Khashoggi was actually plotting a coup and attempting to potentially overthrow the government of Saudi Arabia. And there's a lot of weird spy versus spy stuff in the background there. But the fact is Saudi Arabia was massively threatened by the Iran deal under Barack Obama. And Israel was threatened on the security side, at least as the tone of the diplomatic posturing was. It was that Saudi Arabia was scared it was going to be economically cut out of the oil and gas in the region, and Israel was scared that it was going to be threatened on security grounds because the Iran deal would allow Iran to become wealthy and therefore fund Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis at the time. And so this drew Saudi Arabia and Israel into a budding alliance for the first time, really in the two nations' history in an overt way. That has undergone some rockiness, but the fact is Trump is trying to have his Saudi Arabia and Israel too, with Qatar in the mix. So we got $600 billion of investment now committed to from Saudi Arabia to the U.S. This adds to something like $200 billion from Japan. And we've seen, I think, must be north of $1 trillion of foreign investment in the U.S. that Trump has secured. This is, of course, in tandem with the tariff and trade policies, the idea of if we're going to compete with China, we should be having foreign countries manufacturing their goods and investing in infrastructure here rather than in China. So you've seen strings of successes. The Qatar development has been surprising to me, very interesting in terms of the 40 chess of it all. Qatar is obviously renowned as the leading ally of Iran. Trump was a pressure on Iran maximalist during his first term, got out of the Iran deal, put maximum sanctions on Iran, completely decimated their economy, forbade foreign countries from being able to buy their oil and gas. Famously, he fought off China's ability to get oil and gas from Iran. But then when Biden won 2 months into his term, China signed a $400 billion oil and gas deal with Iran, which it's one of those things that they got bargain basement discount prices for the world's second largest supply of oil. And it's another one of those foreign policy fumbles from Biden world. It's almost like they want China to win in Iran. They want China to win in Brazil. They want China to win in Europe. And Trump is slowly turning the tide on about 50% of that. We're hearing that Trump has also negotiated a tariff ceasefire, a tariff deal with China as well. But the Qatar development is interesting as well, because obviously there are rumblings about discord with Netanyahu, and Qatar being such a close ally of Iran has sparked this kind of diplomatic and culture war spillover into the underlying issues around Israel-Palestine and a potential war with Iran. So it's fascinating to watch it all unfold. I don't know how much of it is real, because Trump does so much signaling. It's hard to tell how much of it is symbolic, how much of it is, I don't want to say scripted, but how much of it is, could be a phone call saying, okay, I'm going to say this publicly, but just so you're aware, we'll continue the back channel conversations. The thing that most concerns me, because I know a lot of people are talking about the Qatar plane, in this $400 million plane that Qatar has gifted. People were saying they gifted it to Trump, and then Trump came out with a truth saying that this is a gift to the U.S. military. You pay for Qatar's defense, in the sense that we have one of our largest military facilities in the entire Middle East right there in Qatar. Qatar is not some hostile foreign adversary. They work with us. They're partners in the region. And the thing that concerned me, though, is maybe if he had stopped there, I would have said, okay, I see the logic of it. The issue is, to me, is that he said it would be serving as a temporary Air Force One. And Benny, you and I have talked a lot about the plots against, for example, from Ryan Routh, and it was also reported other plots using surface-to-air missiles and RPGs to shoot down Trump's plane. Ryan Routh, of course, was working, we're told, with Iranian networks and Mexican human smugglers about getting these Mexican smugglers to get these RPGs or ballistic folks. And then you saw the same thing with there's a plot reported. The FBI said they thwarted a Mexican smuggling attempt with surface-to-air missiles. Actually, I'm not sure if that came from the FBI, but that was reported in media. And so we're seeing all these. They've already pre-scripted the idea of an Iranian attack on Air Force One. And given that Qatar is seen as indistinguishable from Iran by so many on the world stage, if something were to happen to that plane, God forbid, or if it gives a bad incentive to tamper with that plane, because if something happens to that plane while it's serving as Air Force One, then we definitely get war with Iran.
Yes. Well, I mean, that's obviously would be a massive downside. I think it would be a downside. I think it would benefit very few. It'd benefit obviously very evil people. And I'm not sure that I see the rationale in like Qatar sabotaging the plane itself. I mean, that would mean probably instant war, right, with in the entire region. But yeah, I mean, I guess I can understand it. There is a wall of skulls in the plane that we discovered, which is very interesting. I'm not sure if you've seen this. It leads into my next question about obviously the bounty on heads of people. Donald Trump meeting with somebody, a Syrian leader, who had a $10 million bounty on his head from the State Department. Now Donald Trump's shaking hands with him. This is an easy way for Trump to make $10 million bucks. I mean, if I were Trump, obviously, it's the guy's right in front of you. But here, okay, first off, Mike, here's the skulls. Okay, let's stay on track. Skulls, let's go. Here's the skulls on the plane. This is real. This is from the. You're gonna have to go up, please, to the actual original photo. And so here's the photo. There's like a dining hall or what looks like a club room on the plane, and it does have skulls on the wall, which I don't know, Mike. Maybe to your point, this might be might be a bad omen if the walls are made of skulls. I think I've seen this one in Indiana Jones.
Is this real?
Speaking of yes, this is real.
Where are these coming from?
Here's the zoom in.
Get out of here. What am I looking at?
It's just a skull wall. Doesn't your plane have a skull wall, Mike? Like, obviously, that's why. Or are you poor? Like, okay,
Are they golden skulls?
Your plane didn't come with a golden skull wall, idiot. All right.
Okay, well, this is me for flying in coach. I never realized first class had... Well, okay, so in my head, I'm trying to think.
This is straight out of Spectre, right? This is straight out of a James Bond. Like, this is a set piece from James Bond. Like, I've actually seen this before. And Mike, there is a question here. The question is, a guy who also has a skull wall, the leader of Syria, meeting with President Trump. And I know you're sounding off on this. This man had a $10 million bounty on his head, and here he is with the president. Interesting times. Maybe a skull wall in his future. Well,
I was trying to find a way to transmute it into something potentially optimistic. And I was thinking, in Mexican culture, the skull... these skull ceremonies and holidays signify life. But then that made me think about the Mexican surface-to-air plot missiles, the FBI. Right. So I'm thinking, that's not where where I'm going with this is Mexico. And then we're hearing about Mexican surface-to-air missiles against the Trump's plane. That doesn't exactly give me confidence. But look, I'll say this. I think you're right. It is oddly beautiful as a set piece. But on the topic of Syria, well, it's fascinating. There's a lot going on there. Obviously, the CIA ran what we're told is the most expensive CIA operation in CIA history, called Operation Timber Sycamore, to fund and train the jihadi terrorist groups. During the Obama era, Trump got in power, vowed to eliminate ISIS. His State Department, I believe it was in June 2017, put a $10 million bounty directly on Mohammed al-Jawlani's head. He no longer goes by Mohammed al-Jawlani. He changed his name to Ahmed al-Shara. So I didn't realize this, by the way. You can evidently get out of a CIA Predator drone strike simply by changing the name that you refer to yourself in the database. This is a great life hack, by the way, Benny. You and I might need this.
He should try and change his pronouns. Then he'd really be set free.
I'm no longer Mike Benz. I'm Mohammed Al Benza. Okay. All right. Don't drone strike me, bro.
Mohammed Benghazi.
But the fact is, yes, Benghazi. There you go. Okay. And I'll change it to a skull wall. But what's fascinating is, what would you do if you were Trump in this situation? Because I've thought about this a lot. Trump was very, very harsh on Mohammed al-Jawlani and the Syrian terrorist groups with his own military, who wanted to back because for folks who have not heard this yet, al-Jawlani here, shaking President Trump's hand, was literally an ISIS commander from, I think, 2006 to 2013, and also a relatively high-ranking member of Al-Qaeda. That was the reason that Trump put a bounty on his head in 2017. And then because of backing from our own deep state, who effectively lied to President Trump about our own activities in Syria, after Trump lost in 2020, the generals came out and said, we were constantly playing shell games with the numbers. That's a direct quote, in order to mislead the president about our military presence there and who we were backing and how we were doing it. This was a major Biden foreign policy plank to get to topple Bashar al-Assad. There were false flag terrorism attacks on our own soil in 2015 under Obama in order to justify this war. The famous Garland, Texas, first homegrown domestic ISIS terrorist incident came out 2 years after the fact that the FBI had actually paid an informant $125,000 to become that person's best friend and tell him to, quote, tear up Texas, and was so explicit that even the ISIS guy said, hey, buddy, chill out. And then the FBI was actually tailing the ISIS attacker in Garland, Texas, on his way from they followed him in a unmarked car, but from his drive to the apartment to the place that he would later shoot up, taking pictures and videos the whole time. Then they hid that evidence from defense counsel during the attempted murder trial. And it only came out because of leaks from the FBI field office in Arizona. So the whole thing has been afoot with mischief. But the fact is now al-Jilani is promising that if the U.S. lifts sanctions, that they will use AT&T for their IT infrastructure rather than Chinese Huawei. That they will allow ExxonMobil and Chevron to have partnerships with the Syrian oil. And if you remember, Trump was very explicit. The only reason we continue to be in Syria is for the oil. We're taking the oil, famously, he said. So essentially, al-Jilani now, Trump inherited this. This was the last month of the Biden administration. They gave everything they could to help ISIS take over Syria. But now that ISIS occupies Syria, Trump has inherited this deck, and you've got two choices. You can sort of continue this war on ISIS, which in a lot of ways is a war on ourselves. It's a war on our own creation and something that we've been paying for and subsidizing through USAID and through the Central Intelligence Agency. Or you can kind of settle for the wins that you can achieve, such as getting them to promise that they'll wear suits and that they will adopt certain Western, liberal internationalist aesthetics and functionally turn over the country's economy to the U.S. rather than to China, as China is attempting to broker and further its own influence in the Middle East. So, there's a kind of deal with the devil aspect of this, and Trump is, Trump's a deal maker.
I mean, I guess it makes a lot of sense. Here we go. We go from stop this terrorist, $10 million reward, to the guy wearing a suit, changed his name. Now he's shaking hands with Trump. I don't mind it, man. I think I see the pragmatic value in all of it. And I also would much rather this nation be in the craw and influence vectors of us through our Saudi partnerships than Chinese or Russian or Iranian influence. I mean, the world is a nasty and brutal place, and there are realities to it, and those realities shouldn't be covered up. When you cover them up, you get the Epstein situation. You posted this last week, and it's the last thing I want to talk to you about, Mike. You posted this last week with Pam Bondi, who had to come out and finally, because James Comer came on our show and just went scorched earth. He's like, they have nothing. They have no Epstein evidence. Nobody held on to any of that Epstein evidence. It's gone. There were shredders in front of the DOJ and FBI. It's all gone, right? And Pam Bondi was asked about that, and she comes out and she says, no, we have tens of thousands of videos. Mike bends over the top. New messaging by the FBI DOJ. Epstein delay is due to parsing of so many predatorial pornographic videos. This messaging is off. The central question needing no vids at all. A very quick answer. If they want to tell us, why was the prior DOJ told to back off because Epstein belonged to intelligence? You're, of course, referencing Alex Acosta there. And when Epstein was caught dead to rights in underage prostitution activities here in the state of Florida. Please expound, Mike. What's happening with this Epstein saga? I've gotten a chilling response, quite frankly, from people that were gung-ho about releasing everything. And I can't quite put my finger on it. So please expound for us.
Well, I was told by folks at the FBI that there's the FBI is likely not in possession of files relating to Epstein and intelligence. I believe that those would be held either certainly at the Justice Department layer, but then either at the CIA layer as well, or then there's the question of whether or not intelligence meant just domestic, or if it meant just international, or if it meant both. And I believe that the answer to this is both. There's almost no way to look at Jeffrey Epstein's life history and see non-involvement with the Central Intelligence Agency. The fact is when Les Wexner's tax attorney, Arthur Shapiro, was murdered the day before he was set to testify to the IRS while he was the tax accountant for the Wexner financial empire. That's when Jeffrey Epstein linked up with Wexner, and then that was in Columbus, Ohio. And then Jeffrey Epstein, who was partnered with the Saudi Khashoggi network during Iran-Contra, running the arms to the Iran part of Iran-Contra. Jeffrey Epstein then goes and negotiates the transfer of Southern Air Transport, the CI proprietary airline that was used in Miami and in Mena, Arkansas, where Bill Clinton was the governor, from Miami straight to Rickenbacker Air Force Base in Columbus, Ohio. How does one get to negotiate the transfer of a CI proprietary airline? That was a literal CI proprietary airline without being in the business. How did Jeffrey Epstein get a lease directly from the U.S. State Department for the second largest residential building in New York City? In the 1990s, Jeffrey Epstein, as part of the diplomatic showdown with Iran in the 1990s, the U.S. seized this vast presidential semi-palace in New York owned by the government of Iran, and then promptly leased it to none other than Jeffrey Epstein. And then, I mean, how does the State Department become your personal landlord after seizing it from another country? And then Jeffrey Epstein got in a kerfuffle with the State Department over this because Jeffrey Epstein deceived the State Department and subleased it out to the defense lawyer for the French Connection and Pizza Connection cases, the famous two cases of CIA drug running through the Italian mafia on the eastern seaboard of the U.S., through pizza shops, and on the banks of the Marseille in France. And so you have this network that goes back a very long time with U.S. intelligence with Epstein. But the fact is there seems to be pretty obvious connections to Israeli intelligence, potentially British intelligence, potentially Saudi intelligence. But all of this could be asked and answered, I think, at the Justice Department layer. I mean, at least tell us if it's true or false. If the official story is Alex Acosta lied, because remember, Alex Acosta was the Secretary of Labor. Now, the Department of Labor is the union department in the United States. And I don't think I need to tell the audience, if you've seen enough Godfather movies, about the links between organized labor and organized crime. That is, the unions are the principal means of control for organized crime to be able to run transport lanes, to be able to smuggle things, to be able to control the import and export on docks, to be able to transport them on railways, also to serve as muscle. I can talk at length about all of that. And Alex Acosta was also the dean of the law school of FIU, Florida International University, which is a major hotbed for CIA activity. For example, Juan Guaido, who was the CIA-backed candidate to topple the government of Maduro, was actually announced to be the president of Venezuela, I think despite only receiving something like 7% of the vote. At the State of the Union address, both standing ovation from both sides of the aisle in 2020. What I'm saying is Alex Acosta is a guy who would probably know that, given that he was the dean at FIU, given that he was the secretary of the Department of Labor, and given that he was Jeffrey Epstein's first prosecutor. And if he comes out and says, I was told to back off Epstein because he belonged to intelligence and to leave it alone, I don't think that he would throw that out haphazardly. He was fighting for his political life at the time when he made this statement. He was forced effectively because of this treatment over Epstein to step down as Secretary of Labor in 2019. So I wonder, what is Alex Acosta doing now? What are the Alex Acosta files like at the Justice Department? Now, the Justice Department is above the FBI, so I don't fault Cash or Dan Bongino or these folks. I believe what I'm hearing from various sources, that the FBI may not be in possession of this. I believe that would be at the Justice Department layer. The question is Pam Bondi, I mean, because here's the thing: they can either come out and tell us, "Listen, Alex Acosta lied. He didn't really belong to intelligence. That was a smokescreen to protect his own political life. There is nothing there." Or they can say, "Here are the files. Here's what Alex Acosta was referring to," or we spoke with Alex Acosta as part of our, we put him under oath and we got him to, in a transcribed interview to tell us everything that he meant. Who told him that he belonged to intelligence? What was the name of the person or individual inside or outside the U.S. government who told Alex Acosta, the prosecutor, that he belonged to intelligence? Who told him to back off? They can tell us that information. They have to say something at this point, is what I'm driving at. You can't just stay mum on this, because that looks the worst. I mean, that looks like you're protecting someone, yes. And that looks like there's something so corrupt inside the Justice Department that it corrupts many of the other attempts to clean up the Justice Department, because no matter how many people you fire, and I think they've done great work. I think Harmeet Dillon's done fantastic work. I think Pam Bondi has done great work in firing a bunch of the 15 of these J6 prosecutors and a number of other actions.
But wouldn't it then be Tulsi Gabbard or John Ratcliffe then who answers for this?
Well, that's a good point. My understanding is the Justice Department is holding on to this, and I don't know.
Strange grenade to hold on to if the actual answers are across the Potomac at the CIA.
Right. That's a good point. In fact, this is one of these things where I feel that there should be some sort of, I was joking and calling it Fridays with the FBI, but there should be a sort of, beer with the Justice Department, a kind of, because that would be a great question to ask Pam Bondi directly, is following up about Alex Acosta and his statements about intelligence, and then following up with the CIA. And we should, the problem is everything else begins to look a little bit like, dressing up. I was going to say, putting silk on a pig, but that's a little too, I think, extreme. But basically, it looks like you're beating around the big problem. If there's this big issue that you ran on, you campaigned on, that everybody seemed to be in the know about it. We heard Cash testify in Congress a few days ago that he believed that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself in prison, which, maybe that is Cash's genuine belief. And again, I think Cash is doing, on the whole, a fantastic job. But, I would say probably 80-90% of the country at this point does not believe that story, thinks that there's something very strange about both of the security cameras malfunctioning, the visitor log pages being torn out of the prison book, both of the security guards either falling asleep or walking off while that happened. So there's a big fart under the blanket here, and the refusal to at least waft the blanket is just not a good smell.
Okay. We were pretty shocked about that with Cash. We were like, wait a second. What do you mean? Because you've been on the show saying that he didn't kill himself. So what do you now know? And if you've come across new information, then by all means, please, share it.
And
that's owed an explanation. I think we're all
at
this point, Mike, it's weird because what's happening here is it's almost like people who were not part of these crimes, right? So it's like Cash didn't cover for Epstein. Pam Bondi's not on the Epstein list. Donald Trump has an immaculate record with Jeffrey Epstein. Put that on trial. Because we have the clips of the lawyers that tried to lock up Epstein in Palm Beach saying Trump's our only friend. He's the only person in this community that testified against Epstein. We have James Patterson on camera being like, listen, I'm the most respected author in America. I physically watched Donald Trump escort Epstein out of his club and kick him out permanently for life, right? Like, Trump has an immaculate record here. What's the point of protecting this operation? Like, it's not these people, and this isn't going to blow back on anyone. Alex Acosta isn't part of the administration anymore. So just like out with it. You know what I mean? Like, it actually strangely does logistical and strategic damage to the Trump administration by not being out with it. Or if the evidence was destroyed, say that. Hey, listen, like seriously, these files are empty. And there's criminal engage, like we're gonna have to like go log in and figure out who emptied them, but we got nothing, right? Like, I just don't understand the strategy here. That's what I don't get, right? Like, why protect anyone in this operation?
Well, it's worth, and again, I think just because I've had conversations with folks at FBI, but I haven't at DOJ. My understanding is, the FBI genuinely does not have, at least this is what sources are telling me, does not have files on this, which makes me, look upward to DOJ and CIA. But the fact is look, Pam Bondi was the Attorney General for the state of Florida, and that was exactly where Epstein was tried. That was where, it was where Alex Acosta was the prosecutor in Florida. Jeffrey Epstein was all over Florida. Jeffrey Epstein, as I mentioned, had all those involvements in South Florida and in Miami, and I mentioned the transfer of Southern Air Transport, the CIA airliner, from Florida. So I would think that, Pam Bondi would know a fair amount about this network just through that alone, coming into it. And I don't know, I could see a lot of shrapnel getting on Trump world over this, actually, from strange directions, not on Trump himself, but that could be it. There could be something more benign, but the fact is the longer time goes by, the more they're throwing up things like having to sift through CP files and things like that. That's not what anybody really has been interested about this. I think it's been
never once called for that. Never.
Right. It's been stipulated, that this guy was involved in these things. It's presumably why
we say blur the entire image and just show us Bill Clinton's face, right? That's like you can just give us the list. That's actually what we like. What people would like is some accountability here. And then ultimately, the longer that they hold out, the worse it gets, and the more it looks like this thing goes deeper than we ever thought. So,
right,
yeah, okay. Well, that may be a question for Tulsi, right? Maybe a question for John Ratcliffe, if that's where the actual smoking guns, if that's where the actual evidence.
But it should really be zeroed into that intelligence question, in my view, because at least give us the answer on that, because that gives us the answer to whether he was protected. And I could see this there being a bifurcation. This happened in the run to 9/11, where the CIA was hiding things from the FBI. The FBI was complaining that they didn't have the intelligence they were supposed to be getting from the CIA. I could see it being genuinely true that the FBI does not have information on this, that it was above that layer. But the fact is the Justice Department would be the keeper of that information. And I've just never seen Pam Bondi straight asked, was Alex Acosta being truthful or was he lying? What files have you found? What can you tell us? Can you commit that you will disclose all Justice Department files around the negotiation of the plea deal? I mean, presumably, if the lead prosecutor was told to back off because he belonged to intelligence,
federal prosecutor,
that there's going to be, if not a paper trail, emails, communications. I mean, every email, every text message, and frankly, every person that Alex Acosta was talking to at that time in and around the DOJ and beyond should be part of this inquiry, so that we can know if he was a child sex trafficker, if he was a protected one by U.S. or foreign intelligence. That to me is the key question.
That's right. Did our tax dollars pay for these heinous crimes? I think that's important, and it's something that we have a right to know as the people footing the bill for this kind of stuff. And this is what actual accountability looks like. Mike Benz, I know that you told me before, you texted me right before the show, and you said that you're getting a skull wall installed in your apartment right behind you there. So that you can do, so it's going to be like more live, your lives and your hits are going to have like that extra punch to them, right? And so I know you have to go and let the installers go in and put all the skulls in there. Not going to ask where the skulls come from, right? I mean, that's just like a personal question for you. It's a personal decoration question, so it's none of my business, quite frankly. But I respect it, I respect it, and I know you're taking a cue from President Trump's new plane, so...
Thanks, Benny. You know what? You've inspired me. I actually might I'm going to go to Temu now or Amazon and see if I can find my best. And then look, maybe I'll get a deal with
Text Ryan Ralph.
AT&T.
Ryan
Chevron,
Ralph's not too
Exxon.
far from you.
Yeah.
Just text him. I'm sure he'll be able to smuggle some in for you.
I'll hit up my Ukrainian contact.
Oh, it's getting dark. That's right. Ladies and gentlemen, if you want to see the light, go to Mike Benz's X page. He's got 1 million followers. Okay, he's a millionaire. He's got 1 million followers on X. He's even got the light shining there in his cover image.